Sardines today, fresh calamari going in there, except that we don't cook it for these guys. If you go out and order it tonight in a restaurant, you'll get the same stuff because we buy it from the same places. But they'll probably cook it for you if you ask them to. And some of the first fish in there, in addition to the tunas, are these large silvery ones up at the top that have kind of a square head and a big dorsal fin that runs the whole length of their back. Those are dolphin fish. They look a little bit like miniature whales or dolphins, and they swim like dolphins. They jump right out of the water. And some of you have probably eaten dolphin fish and may not have realized it because most restaurants don't like to call it by that name. They're afraid you'll be confused and think they're serving you a dolphin, which is not a fish at all. It's a mammal. So most restaurants use the Hawaiian name for dolphin fish, which is mahi-mahi. Oh, some of you recognized that name, didn't you? Now you're looking at them a little differently. You're trying to picture them on a bed of rice in the cafeteria in about an hour, but you can't pick your lunch out of our exhibits. We don't let you do that here at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. You're right, though. It's a great eating fish. It's actually one of my favorites, and here's a seafood watch tip. This is the way our guide works. The next time you're getting ready to order mahi-mahi in a restaurant or buy it in a market, ask them where it comes from. If it comes from a U.S. fishery, go ahead and buy it. They're well managed, and that's on our good alternatives list. But if it's imported from another country, we would ask you to pass on it and not buy it because most foreign fisheries for mahi-mahi are not very well regulated and are causing a lot of damage to the ocean. So that's the way our consumer guide works, and you can help by starting to ask the right questions as you buy seafood. Now, some of you here may know mahi-mahi by its Spanish name. The Spanish name for that is dorado. Dorado is the Spanish word for golden yellow in color, and you might wonder why would you name a silver fish gold, but if you've been watching them, you've seen some color changes, and that is not our lights doing that. That's the fish doing that. They have cells in their skin that allow them to change their colors. They can do a beautiful sky blue, a deep emerald green, or a bright golden yellow. So keep an eye on them up there. And sometimes it's only the tail, like this one right here has a beautiful golden yellow tail. Sometimes the fin, sometimes the whole body. You never quite know. Anything that gets them really excited and stimulated will do that. So it means while they're feeding, they're pretty excited. When they're spawning and reproducing, they get pretty excited. And when you catch them on your fish hook, that's when they get excited. And that's why the fishermen in Mexico for years have called them dorado, the goldfish, because that's the color that they were seeing. Now these little ones up here, these are mostly Pacific sardines, and they can't eat this food that Pete's throwing in here. It's way too big for them. They're the vacuum cleaners. What they're doing is they're swimming through the exhibit looking for the crumbs that come from the bigger fish. When the bigger fish take a bite of food, little pieces flake off, and that's what the sardines are after. They swim through with their mouths open and vacuum it out and help us clean the water out. The problem with being a sardine is that you are so small that you fit in everybody else's mouth. And you'd probably rather not. So you need to always be paying attention, because if you get too distracted trying to get food, you can become food. And the other thing you need is you need lots of friends. You know, if you've got lots of friends, it improves your odds. That if somebody gets eaten, oh, it'll be one of you guys, not me. So you want to be in as big a group as you can, and then maybe you've got a chance to survive if a predator comes along. You watch the tunas and the mahi-mahi up here, and every now and then they'll take a little shot because they don't really care whether they catch one of the dead sardines that Pete's throwing in or one of the live ones that's swimming in front of them. So they'll keep an eye on things and see if they catch somebody that's not paying attention. Now you just noticed a couple of sharks. Here's a hammerhead shark right in front of the window. One of our Galapagos sharks just swam through. They wait until after the big tunas have had enough so that they slow down a little, and then the sharks will come out and see if they can grab a piece or two of food. But for them, this is a between meal snack, so they're not really going to try very hard here. Here's a Galapagos shark up at the top. Now what they do is they try to stay out of the way. Those big 300-pound tunas can swim 30 to 40 miles an hour, and the last place you want to be with a 300-pound tuna swimming 40 miles an hour is in its way, because it's liable to just ram right through you. So you'll see this hammerhead's got a piece of squid that it's trying to see if it can get down. It's got a pretty small mouth, but it'll get it down. But if a tuna gets close to it, it's going to just zip right out of the way and take off, so it doesn't get hurt by those tunas. The sharks really are not fast enough to compete with the tunas very well, and they're very fragile. Sharks don't actually have any bones in their body. Their body is made of cartilage. Their skeleton is. It's like your earlobe. So it's very flexible, but it's very soft. And so if they get rammed by a tuna, they're the ones that are going to get hurt, not the tuna. And they know that, so they stay out of the way. Now, don't worry about our sharks. We take really good care of them. Each of the sharks gets fed individually, and we put the food on the end of a pole where we can reach right in and hand it right to the shark. And if the tuna gets there first, we pull it back and make sure that we save it for the sharks. That way the sharks get plenty to eat. So they're not going to go hungry in here, even if they can't compete very well. Also, right near the bottom of the window now, you hear she comes up in the top. That's one of our pelagic stingrays, and you saw her try to grab a little piece of food too. This is not really the way they are designed to eat, but what that stingray may do is try to get under some of the food there. She's going to try to wrap her wings around it, tip upside down, there she goes, and she'll try to get under it and hope the food falls in her mouth. That's kind of like getting a drink in the yard by standing out in a rainstorm with your mouth open and hope that enough water goes in to give you a drink of water. But that's what she's going to do in here, because she knows this food can't swim away. It's dead. So she's really going to take a shot at it. That's not how we feed them in here either. So if they don't get much, that's okay too. The stingrays are actually trained to come to a target before we put them in this big exhibit. And when we're ready to feed them, we put a target in the water way over here on the left-hand side of the exhibit, and the stingrays swim over to us, and they go right up to the top of the exhibit and lay on their back with their wings open like this and their belly up, and we throw the food right on their belly, and then they wrap it up and work it up to their mouth, and that's how they get their food in here. If any of you watched the sea otter feeding at about 10:30, we did the same thing. We have a target for the sea otters, and they come over to the trainer and lay on their back, and we throw the food on their belly. So it's a very similar feeding method in the exhibit here. Now let's see, it looks like most of the food, a little bit of it has made it all the way down a little below our window. Very little of it gets all the way to the bottom, but if any of it does, the hammerheads will pick that up. That's where they're more comfortable feeding, is at the bottom. In the wild, these scallop hammerheads would actually be picking up small reef fish that they would try to trap against the rocks or the sand around shallow reefs. And so they are more comfortable picking up the scraps that make it all the way down to the bottom. There's one. I was waiting for them to come out. There's a long, skinny fish up in the top there. Just took a shot right through the school of sardines. That is a California barracuda. There it is right there, hanging a little bit to the right-hand side of center near the top. There's another one over here. There are 7 of them in here. They look a little lethargic most of the time. They just kind of hang out in there, not doing much, trying to give the impression that they're really not much of a threat. They will pick food off the edges. They don't like to try to get in the way of the tunas, but they'll pick around the edges. That's one of the reasons that Pete throws the food in a big arc here and covers the whole exhibit. But the other thing that those barracudas like to do is, there we go, right there, watch the sardines and look for somebody that's not paying attention. And if you find somebody that's not paying attention, they're fully capable of accelerating really fast, like an arrow shot out of a crossbow, and they'll try to zip and see if they can grab a live sardine. So they're the most likely ones to pick